would understand it for what it is and push back both in public and in private.
McFall served as ambassador during the Obama administration. President Trump is criticizing the Federal Reserve for raising interest rates.
I'm not thrilled because, we go up, and every time you go up, they want to raise rates again. And I don't really, I am not happy about it.
In an interview set to air on CNBC tomorrow, Trump said, however, he is letting Fed officials do what they feel is best. Search warrants are pending for a home possibly connected with a North Texas bank robbery and shooting. Fort Worth police are not sure if someone is actually inside the house, as they're being extremely cautious. 3 women were injured but should survive. Tensions are already high ahead of a protest outside the L.A. office of Congresswoman Maxine Waters. This woman says she's against the group planning to protest at this hour.
I just don't like the flag, so I made a comment of the red, white, and blue flag. I represent the red, black, and green.
The group behind the protest is called the Oath Keepers, and many people on social media call them racist. Disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein's legal counsel claims Weinstein and Ashley Judd had an agreement to let him touch her. The L.A. Times reports under the deal, Weinstein could touch Judd if she won an Academy Award in one of his films. Carmine Gotti Agnello, the 32-year-old grandson of mob boss John Gotti, is under arrest, accused of running an illegal vehicle scrapyard in Queens. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
From the KCAA Weather Center, I'm Rod Williams for tonight. Mostly clear, an overnight low of 59. Sunny and hot on Tuesday with a high of 92. Tuesday night will be clear with an overnight low of 61. West winds at 15. I'm Rod Williams, broadcasting live from the Tri-City Center at the 10 and 210 freeways. We are the trifecta of talk in Southern California. KCAA 102.3 FM Riverside, 106.5 FM Redlands, and The Legacy, 1050 AM Loma Linda and San Bernardino.
It's time to shop in the cool, relaxed comfort of the Tri-City Shopping Center in Redlands, conveniently located on the I-10 freeway between the Alabama and Tennessee exits. Bring the kids too and watch them play in the only indoor fun center. High Five Indoor Playground, where parents are welcomed on the playground. Birthday celebrations are encouraged, so make plans for some great fun at the mall. More reasons why the Tri-City Center is called the Mall with a Heart. Drivers, when it's time to visit the DMV, avoid the long lines and save time by calling toll-free 833-DMV-LINE. That's 833-DMV-5463.
KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. By the way, you can follow this program on Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John, or go to our website at www.viewpointwithfatherjohn.com. This is a listener-supported program, so if you want to help keep us on the air, when you go to the website, kindly go to the button that says support, press it, and then you can contribute however much you like. And those of you who have contributed, I want to thank you. A couple of announcements. Tomorrow night, I will be in the city of Covina at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church, 100 North 3rd Avenue. That's 7 p.m., doing a book signing and a question and answer with Father Steve DeMuth. And it should be a lot of fun. If you don't have a copy of the book yet, you can get a copy of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me there. We'll have some in supply at a great price. And also on Saturday, Martha Bass and I are doing an all-day workshop from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. for we clergy. That's all day. And that's going to be at the United Church of Christ in Claremont. And it's $35 for both the workshop and a light lunch. So that's a good deal. Come out and see us. You don't have to pre-register, but come on in. We do accept check, cash, or credit card, I found out yesterday from Martha. So I hope to see you at either of those events or both of those events. Tonight, I'm really excited. We're having a guest back, and we're kind of doing it in a funny way tonight, and we're having to be innovative, and I want to thank Blake, our board operator, for helping us figure things out because the phones at the radio station are having issues.
Yeah, we can only do texts on the air. No calls anymore, just texts.
Yeah, just text. So watch your radio screen, and you'll see the text coming through. But my guest tonight is my friend Morgan Lynn, and she's the author of the book, The Spirited Human, Proactive Tools for a Reactive World. And Morgan, welcome on air.
Hi, Father John. Thank you so much for having me back.
So glad to have you. Can everyone hear you okay? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Perfect. Now I can hear you in my headphones. There we go. For those who don't know what's going on, I have her on my speakerphone with a microphone hooked up to that. So how have you been since the last time you and I spoke?
In full disclosure, I've been going through some what I call shadow work. I know that I talked about it last time on the show. I've been doing my own deep work, so I've had ups and downs, I'll be honest. You know, it's ever evolving and ever unfolding, but today's a good day. I'm clear-headed. I know what I'm doing. I get it, so today's a good day.
Well, good. Well, I'm glad you're here with us. And, you know, that is life when you look at it. I often give the example, if you look at an EKG, and the way the rhythm is up, down, up, down, up, down, that's life. Straight line is dead. And so you're going through the life process. Is there anything that you can talk about that's going on, or what's some of the deep work?
Yeah, some of the work that I've been doing, I think a lot of people resonate with this. It's finding my voice, finding that space where we're centered when we need to use our voice, and that's been a very lifelong process for me. I grew up in an abusive household where your voice didn't matter and you kept getting shut down, and you know, that kind of typical scenario. And I've been making some progress in that area. I'm quite proud that I had an altercation this weekend, and I was not only able to stay present to the person shouting at me, but I could also see where they were hurt,
right,
as opposed to allowing their anger to hurt me. And that was kind of a big deal for me. I had never had that before, so I was pretty proud.
That's interesting. You know, that goes right into the workshop I'm doing Saturday with Martha Bass, all about forgiveness. And, you know, some of the forgiveness that we have to do affects our common day life with people we come in contact with that are dealing with their own issues. And sometimes they don't even realize that they're taking out their issues on us.
This person didn't. She didn't really, like, it's an interesting scenario. It's an interesting situation because I could see why she was hurt. I could see where she was hurt. But I could also just see how anger is usually the cover-up with the hurt. When one is angry and projecting it onto other people, the anger is just a protection for what's really wounded. And I was able to see that and just kind of hold her in that space and not really fix her, or, you know, because it's not my job. And I just held that space for myself and just witnessed her, and it was an interesting moment.
That's a very powerful statement you just made. You know, I want to digress, if I may, for anyone who has not grown up in a dysfunctional home, as we call them now. We used to have a different way of saying it that I can't say on the air. But people play different roles in trying to survive that type of environment. You have the peacemaker, you have the comedian, you have the diplomat. We have the people who overexcel. You know, they're the straight A students. All this trying to make things better at home because they think if somehow they're a better child, it will fix the problem, and it never does. And it's not their fault. I'm not putting anyone down for that. But if we don't acknowledge that, then we can't do what you just did in recognizing this might be where this is coming from with that person. And you said something really well about the wounds that they have. And, you know, anger is a secondary emotion. I know you know that. it's a direct result of fear that we're not going to get something we feel we need or want, or that we're going to lose something that's important to us. And that could either be something material, or it can be a loss of respect, self-image, reputation. All of these things fall in that. So when you're playing dodgeball in the house of, trying to keep from getting nailed from whatever's going to happen, it can make it difficult navigating life. Are you working on any projects right now?
I am actually. I'm working on 2 pretty powerful weekend intensive workshops. I've got one that I call Intuition by Design. I get the question quite often with my clients and people that come to my classes where they want a stronger relationship with their own intuition, and they want to understand their guides. They want to have that close relationship with their spirit guides and angels, and they don't know how to do it. The question, though, is the thing that I get from people is they think that it's this cookie-cutter process that all you have to do is fill in the blanks and color, paint by number and all of that, and everything will be fine. But we're really unique in our own individual ways, and we all have our own style of intuition. We have our own guides. We have our own life path. So it's not going to be cookie-cutter. And so the Intuition by Design is a way to figure out how you are intuitive, and then what tools you need to support you in that individuality.
That's a powerful workshop. One of the things I found through the years, and those of us who work in the religious world, we tend to see from all different kinds of traditions. And I've watched people who hear about spirit animals and stuff like that, and they think that they can go to one powwow for the Native Americans, and they're going to know what their power animal is. And I'm not putting anybody down with that, so don't take that wrong.
No, but I know what you mean.
But what you're talking about, I think, is so important. Could you talk to the listeners a little bit about what are spirit guides and some of the angels you're talking about?
Yeah. In my language, in my practice, I believe that we, as a human, as a right of being born, have with us at least 2 guardian angels and 1 spirit guide. These beings are with us by a contract. They have agreed to be with us every single day of our life, from beginning to end, from before we're born until after we die. It's their honor to assist us in remembering who we are. Because when we're a spirit, when we're in soul space, we remember everything about who we are and where we come from and the joy and the love that we are. But then we're born and we forget everything. And so we are kind of fumbling on this planet of trying to remember who we are and then remember what we wanted to achieve while we were here. Right. Our guides and our angels remember everything. And so they agree to nudge us and guide us and support us in the direction that we initially set out, the direction we wanted to go.
Right. Well, that's not a new concept either. In the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church, St. John Chrysostom, St. Gregory of Alexandria, and several other of the early church fathers and mothers talked a great deal about the angels, our guardian angels, and our communication with them. And I think it's kind of sad that in today's modern church, there's many factions of the church that have forgotten that, and now they kind of pass it off as hocus pocus, which is not.
Yeah.
I've had too many incidences where there's been something beyond me that has literally saved my bacon on an occasion, and also where I've received guidance at just the right time when I needed it, and there was no explaining how or where that came from if you want to just use the logos mind instead of the mythos mind.
Right.
So
yeah, it's a beautiful relationship. I really, it has gotten me through some really tough times in my life, and honestly, I don't know where I would be if I had not cultivated that relationship, because in the very beginning, I didn't want it. I didn't understand them, and I was afraid of their judgment because I misunderstood what they stood know what I was doing in that point in my life, but I'm really, really glad that I gave in and surrendered to it, because my life has done a complete 180 from where I was. So I'm incredibly grateful for that relationship.
Now, did you discover this when you were discovering your talents for intuition?
Yeah, it was right around the same time. It was right around the time when everything was kind of waking up, and then I started noticing that I was hearing voices and didn't know what to do with that. But then just realizing, oh, these are angels. I didn't want anything to do with them, because I had at that time had left my church, and I thought they were coming back into my life to judge me and tell me that I had done something wrong, and I wasn't in the space to hear that. So I kept trying to push them away.
I think it's important to clarify that the voices you're hearing are not the same thing that we associate with schizophrenia. That's a whole different kind of thing. And one of the ways that people can tell the difference, for those who are wondering, usually in the case of schizophrenia, it's not a friendly voice. In fact, it's something that's usually condemning you for something you've done or a situation that's left unresolved. And it's a continual battle. If you ever have watched anyone, I can remember in my early training seeing people just really battling with themselves, with somebody who the rest of us couldn't see, and really what they're battling was themselves, which is a lot different than what you're talking about. So I want to make that clarification for our listeners. We're coming up on our first break, but after break I want to continue this a little bit about your workshop, particularly on how to develop your intuition. And so we'll be back in just a couple minutes.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
When Michelle lost her job, her home, and her children because of her addiction, she was desperate to make a change. She felt hopeless. Then she discovered Cedar House Life Change Center in Bloomington. Their staff showed Michelle how to live drug-free and be the mother she always knew she could be. You know what it feels like to be trapped in your addiction? Too many people in our community feel that way every day. That's why Cedar House is here to help with a range of residential and outpatient care. To support the mission of recovery, visit cedarhouse.org, where they say, "Come grow with us."
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And I have a terrific guest with me this evening, Morgan Lynn, who is sharing with us her insights as a spiritual guide and director. And by the way, I really would like to recommend her book, The Spirited Human, Proactive Tools for a Reactive World. It's a book I've personally read and I've enjoyed very much, so I highly recommend you go to Amazon and get a copy, or Barnes & Noble, or any place that sells fine books. And welcome back, Morgan.
Thank you.
We're talking a little bit about the workshop you're going to do on learning how to hear your angels and guides, and also how to, I guess, learn how to trust your intuition. Would that be a way to put it?
Yeah, that's a very big component for people. I think, honestly, everyone has access to intuition. I believe we're all born with our own style of being able to connect to that ability.
Right.
We break down the trust, though. Life kind of beats us up a little, or we're not supported, or maybe we hear intuition and we make the wrong decision, and it feels like we failed, so we start
Well, some that you said, I've had friends that have had really powerful abilities, and one of the things that stunted their growth for a while was the lack of support, as you put it, and actually some of the condemnation of some religious people in their family who feared what they didn't understand. And so they thought this was something evil going on. But Jesus went through that too. When he was doing all the miracles, they says by Beelzebub that he was doing these miracles. And,
right. It all depends on the perspective. It just depends on the fear of the people witnessing it. So fear is a big factor in a lot of these cases, because you're right. You mentioned earlier about how some other religions look down on that connection with our guides and our angels, and because they tell you that it's the devil whispering in your ear. So there's, historically, there's a lot of fear propagated around this conversation, and so even just to untangle those programs and those beliefs, that can be hard for some people if they've been raised in a really strict fear-based religion that teaches that kind of belief.
Right, and particularly that teaches that anytime you have any type of belief in yourself, that somehow that goes against the will of God. And, in my reading of Christian literature and also Hebrew literature, that's not what I get from it. What I get from Jesus' message is, to learn how to trust that still small voice. That's why he said in Luke 17:21, Dethi Makutha in Aramaic, the kingdom of God is within you. And if that's the truth, then that means we're going to hear a lot of that guidance from within. Would you not agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. In fact, I love that you teach that. I love that you talk about that, because for me personally, that is one of the reasons I left my own church, is because it started teaching against those kinds of things. But something within me knew that was not accurate, and so I wanted to go find my own way. And I have clients that have had a lot of teaching, religious teachings that condemn them and have harmed them with those beliefs. So I'm so glad you talk about it like that, because I do. I think that we have a direct connection to that source, and so that means it's going to come from within. It's not an outside piece of information. It's going to come from within us.
Right. Well, my friend Chuck Chamberlain used to say quite often that what you're looking for, you're looking with. It's in there.
Oh, yeah.
And and that's been my experience. That's the premise of my book, Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me, is the fact that each one of us are born as the child, and that God doesn't have stepchildren, and that when we learn to trust that still small voice, we then go into whatever our right work is, and it's almost like you have invisible hands supporting you through all this, because you're learning to trust. There's a little story that Richard Bach told in his book Illusions. I'm going to just take a moment and share with the listeners, and I'd like to get your take on it. But in the front of the book Illusions, he has these handwritten notes about this mechanic who's a spiritual teacher is giving a teaching to some of the people coming to him. And he said, there's these creatures on the bottom of the stream, and their whole life is a struggle to hang on to the different twigs and the different branches on the bottom of the stream, and the whole life is a struggle. And one of these creatures said one day, I have to believe that the stream knows where it's going. And so I'm going to let go and trust that it will carry me where it wants me to go. And everyone said to him, fool, you'll be killed. You'll be smashed against the rocks. He said, well, I'd rather die that way than die of boredom down here. So he let go. And sure enough, he gets smacked against some of the rocks and the sides of the riverbed. But no matter what, he refused to cling to anything, to cling to the roots or the branches. And at one point, the river lifted him up to the top of the water and just took him downstream, where he was no longer being harmed. And as he's going downstream, there's other creatures, such as his own, that see him, and they say, look, it's one like us, but he flies. And he tries to say to him, no, I'm just like you, but if you let go, the stream will carry you like it's carrying me. And within a few moments, he was gone, out of sight. And for years, they talked about the great Messiah that flew over in the stream and told him how much we were like him. And if we let go, the stream would carry us too. And that's kind of my take on almost every form of the world religions. The top ones kind of have that same message. If you let go, the spirit, the stream, will carry you if you learn to trust. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that speaks to me on multiple levels. Of course, also I'm hearing the relationship we have with attachment, because the human side of us, the ego side of us, gets very attached to what we think is right.
Oh, yeah.
And yet it's that attachment, and Buddhists, the Buddhists teach this, they teach detachment, that need to be right, that need to hang on and fight the current, and I must hang on. That's where all of our pain comes from. That's where our struggle comes from, because we are so attached to this must be the way. But when we just let go and you have that surrender moment, you start seeing that there's so many other things, so many other possibilities. But if you're attached to only one possibility, you're causing your own struggle in life.
Yes, yes. Well, a friend of mine, Dr. Luis Diagua, boy, if I could have had a name like that, I'd really be famous, huh? He's a Peruvian guy, and meant a lot to me in my younger days. He was a great inspiration. He said one of the mistakes people make when they're in business and things are going slow, they start cutting things away. And he says, when life gets difficult, start breathing less and less and see what happens. He says this is the time where we invest more in what it is we're doing, because crisis time is awakening time to find new answers for old situations. And it sounds like maybe that's a little bit of what's going on with your ups and downs right now, that this is a new awakening time for you where you're finding new insights, and that will bless you in ways that you'll be even able to help more people. What are your thoughts?
I trust. I've done enough work around the surrender component to understand that even when it's beating me down, that's how it kind of feels. Even when life is getting kind of, rough, I still, in the back of my mind and my heart of hearts, know that there is a message around that I'm going to walk away with nutrition and information that's going to help me understand myself. And then, yes, of course, I know that information will translate over into the people I talk with. So even though I go in and out of feeling sad or frustrated or lonely, there's still a part of me that knows it's for my highest good. And I don't know how I have that. It can be simultaneous. I can be sad and in alignment at the same time, and it's a very interesting feeling to have that.
Well, certainly. I would agree with that 1,000%. There are people who say you cannot have fear and faith at the same time, and I disagree. I can even back up what I say scripturally, where the guy goes to Jesus for the healing of his child, and Jesus says, "Do you believe?" He says, "I believe, help out my unbelief." So you can have both at the same time. There's some days I have more belief than fear, some days more fear than belief. But if our loving Creator is really loving, we're not going to be punished because we've had fears. I know that I'm a parent, and when my son has had fear, my thing is I wanted him to know that I'm here for him and that he's loved through all of it. And if me, who makes all the mistakes I do, love my child that much, how much more does God love us and support us when we have fear?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I agree.
So you said you're working on another workshop as well.
I am. I'm doing another one in November, and that one's going to, the Intuition by Design is in September here in Dallas, but I'm doing another one in November that I'm calling the Empowered Empath.
Ooh.
And it also is a 2-day intensive weekend workshop where we break down every element of an empath, kind of like an onion. You just got to peel it apart and understand the components, put in some techniques and clearing work and exercises and terminology Because if there's anything on this planet I was born to do, that's to help a person that doesn't know they're an empath how to manage being an empath, because that's the one person I see struggling the most.
Right. Could you explain to my listeners what an empath is?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's varying degrees of a person's empathic abilities, but in general, it is a person that feels their surroundings. They feel other people's emotions, their energies. If they're frantic, they feel frantic. If they're sad, they'll feel sad. These are the people that will get overwhelmed in large groups or big functions or events. They can't manage the energy because they are being the psychic sponge. They are sucking in everybody's emotions, and it's too overwhelming if you don't know you are that empath. You just keep taking it on, and then you don't know how to transfer it out of your body, and so your body will actually start carrying everybody's energy.
Yes, and that can manifest itself in back pain, hip pain, headaches,
fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, adrenal failure, thyroid failure. I mean, it can come on. For me, it depends on the style of empath, and it depends on how long they've carried these emotions, because it'll hit a person in different areas.
Well, it's interesting you say fibromyalgia, because I have fibromyalgia, and I have arthritis throughout my body. I figure, if you're going to do something, do it all the way, so I made sure I had arthritis in almost every joint.
You're committed, huh?
Well, I like a good coupon use. And so, get one joint, get the rest free. So, but, it's funny that people will have some of these abilities, and they'll fight having them. And one of the things that cracks me up, and I'm sure you've seen this many times, is you have two people who are kind of connected with each other, and one will say, I knew you were going to say that. And they really did know that the person was going to say that, because they have that connection. I believe there's a spiritual connection between people, but we've learned to tune that out, and that's really a shame. I know that when two people are in love, it's amazing that connection happens. I can start saying something and Gabby can finish my sentence, or vice versa, because we're so connected that we almost hear each other's thoughts. Only with her it's a little more difficult because she thinks in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I get
the translator.
Yeah, but I get the gist.
Yeah, that's how my husband and I are too. He'll think something and I'll say it, and then he'll just give me this look, and I'm like, "That's what you were thinking, right?" So we do that all the time. So I get that.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. But more than anything, it sounds like what you're saying, if I'm hearing you correctly, it's learning how to trust your own insights. Would that be an accurate statement?
Yeah, for me, it's always going to go back to self. Like, I feel like in this world in general, we have lost touch with that. We live very externally. We're taking care of everyone else. We're taking care of all of our responsibilities. We're trying to be this, member of society on whatever level that is for each person. And so we tend to live externally and not think about the internal, not think about that still small voice or the nudges or the instincts or the intuition. And yet so many people are coming to me and saying how disconnected they feel, and they feel lost, and they feel confused, and they're overwhelmed. But it's because they have lost touch with the internal. And so every platform, every space I work in my work is always going to take that person back to their center. And it just depends on the person I'm talking to, like what that looks like. But that's always going to be the foundation for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. It really is. It's important to find people who will give us the emotional and spiritual support so that we really can get to that center. And, I think we have to live on all three levels: physical, emotional, and spiritual. It's like a three-legged stool. If you take one of those legs off, it's really hard to find balance with the other two legs that are left. You have to feed all three, or you starve all three. And, a friend of mine was going to therapy one time, and he asked his therapist if he was normal. And the therapist said to him, normal is 98.6. I think what you're meaning to ask is, are you healthy? He says, okay. Am I healthy? He says, well, a healthy person can do three things. A healthy person can work, a healthy person can play, a healthy person can love. And if you can do all three, you're healthy. And I find with a lot of people I work with, they're good at loving, they're good at working, they have a tough time playing. Or they'll have the other two down and they have a tough time loving because they have a tough time trusting people. And so really what I see my job as is a priest that does a lot of counseling, and I think this would fall into what you do as a spiritual guide, is help people find that healthy balance of being able to live all three legs of that stool. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I like the way you said that. I had never put it into those words, but I agree. I think that I talk a lot about the four bodies. Basically, the auric field is comprised of four layers, and it's physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. And I talk about them as if they were 4 glasses of water, and they need maintenance. You need to check in with them every now and then to make sure that you're not letting one of them dry out. They need to have, every few days, just check in with yourself, and are you overworking spiritually, or are you underworking mentally or overworking emotionally? Because the other glasses are going to suffer if you're giving one glass too much attention.
Right, right. Well, speaking of glasses being half full, we're coming up to our next break, and my guest this evening is Morgan Lynn, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
When Michelle lost her job, her home, and her children because of her addiction, she was desperate to make a change. She felt hopeless. Then she discovered Cedar House Life Change Center in Bloomington. Their staff showed Michelle how to live drug-free and be the mother she always knew she could be. You know what it feels like to be trapped in your addiction? Too many people in our community feel that way every day. That's why Cedar House is here to help with a range of residential and outpatient care. To support the mission of recovery, visit cedarhouse.org, where they say, "Come grow with us."
And welcome back. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And just a few housekeeping things. I want to thank Blake for doing a great job with us always, and he's the man behind the glass.
Yeah, thank you.
And he's the one that pointed me out to a really good restaurant across the parking lot, and I'll tell you what, it's I would say their name, but they haven't bought a commercial yet. So when they buy a commercial, I'll tell you what the restaurant is. So, and again, I'm going to be tomorrow night at Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in Covina, 100 North 3rd Avenue, doing a book signing and Q&A with Father Steve DeMuth, and that should be a lot of fun. Come on out if you're able to do it. I'd like to meet you, and we'll sign some books. We'll have books available there if you haven't bought a copy of Close Your Eyes So You Can See Me Yet. And then, So You Can See Me Yet was not part of the title. And then on Saturday, Martha Bass and I are doing a one-day workshop on forgiveness, which is a very important topic. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., and it's $35 for the all-day event, and that includes a light lunch. And I also want to give thanks to my beloved Gabby, who's over here making sure I stay out of trouble, making sure I say nothing that gives us a letter from the FCC, and making sure I get here on time as well. And tonight, my guest is Morgan Lynn. She is the author of the book, The Spirited Human, Proactive Tools for a Reactive World. And Morgan, it's always a joy having you on this show, and I thank you for being with us tonight. And,
I'm very honored. Thank you for having me.
oh, you're always a delight. And so,
Thank you.
what's some advice you might give the listeners on learning how to trust their intuition and to distinguish between what's really intuition and what's a issue with false voices?
Yeah, one of the things I tell people when trying to distinguish whether it's your guides or maybe you're talking to yourself, one of the ways I tell people is that guides are not critical. They are not judgmental, and they're not in it to test you or confuse you or to put you in a state that's going to stress you out. That's usually what we do to ourselves. Our critical, our inner critic, that critical speaker that we have in our brain is always telling us, you should have done this, and you should have done that. If you're stressed out when you're hearing these things, generally that's you talking to yourself. Your ego is talking to you. Because guides don't really have an interest in doing that with us. They want to enhance our experience. They want to support us and have us move through life with grace and beauty and joy. So their guidance is generally supportive, loving, nurturing. They're the ones that are trying to hold us up when we feel really bad about ourselves. So if you're trying to distinguish between the two, like which is which, stop and listen and really get present to how you feel when you hear what you're hearing.
Right. Well, that's one of the best definitions I've heard, and I appreciate that. It's sort of like when people ask me, how do I know when it's God's will or if it's my will? And I usually tell them if it's terribly important to me, it's probably my will. And if it benefits other people, it's probably God's will.
Yeah.
But, you mentioned the self-criticism and the self-doubter, and we do suffer with that quite a bit. It's one of the reasons we're doing this workshop this weekend, Martha and I, is because we found that one of the most difficult people to learn to forgive is ourselves. And usually for a place that we thought we should have stood up for ourselves, but for whatever reason we could not. Either other people would have been affected or we were afraid of the consequences. And these are the things that wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning that you won't let you go back to sleep, that we have the head attack with. And yeah, that's the inner critic. That's not the spiritual voice. What are some of the ways that people can, I'm not trying to give away your whole workshop in September, but what are some of the ways that people can learn how to identify their guides and their angels?
Honestly, it's one of the easiest relationships you could ever cultivate, and primarily it's because they're so excited when we take a moment to just even have the intention of connecting with them. Because one of the big confusions is that these divine, benevolent beings, I'm a lowly human. There's no way I could talk to them. But really, all you have to do is say, hey, I want to get to know you. What are you all about? You don't have to. It doesn't have to be a fancy prayer. It doesn't have to be this incantation or sonnet or anything like that. They really are just cool people, and they want to get to know you and have you get to know them. So honestly, if you just ask, they'll start making themselves known. They don't want to overwhelm us, so they have a tendency to hold back until we're ready. So it is a very natural, easy relationship to cultivate, but they're waiting on you guys. They want you to let them know that it's okay for them to come forward.
You may not realize this, or you might know this. What you're describing is classic Orthodox Christianity. because the early church fathers and mothers, what we call the desert fathers and mothers, wrote a great deal, almost word for word, what you just said about getting to know your guardian angel, and that they wait for you to make contact, to get to know them, and they're very polite. They don't come where they're not welcome.
Right. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, it's the law of free will. Basically, they're there and they love you and they want to be with you, but they're not in it to stress you out or to hurt you. If they were to just jump out, it would scare you. So they just want to hold back until you let them know you're ready.
Absolutely. And it's a teamwork. It's an intimate relationship.
Right.
And so, I can just hear some of my fundamentalist listeners saying, can Christians talk about this? And I'm not putting you folks down either. You're listeners, and I love you for being listeners of the show. And one of the reasons we do the show is to open some of the listeners up to some new information that is not so new. It's actually thousands of years old and very traditional in the original Christian teaching. And I hope that with this show we're educating a little bit with people so that they can see some of that there's much more that we have lost than we have gained in 2,000 years. Richard Rohr says 2,000 years from now they're going to look back and say that Christianity is in its infancy at this moment because we have so much to learn still.
Yeah. Well, there's nutrition in all teachings. I'm very eclectic in my beliefs, and I love knowing the true teachings of all of the practices, of all the paths, because there's truth in everything, and I love that about that. I tell my friends I've got this quilt work belief system where it's just kind of patched together and it works for me, and I don't expect anybody else to get it, but it works for me.
Sure. And and if nobody else gets it, that doesn't mean it's not valid.
No, yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, I get it.
I think of, again, speaking of Richard Bach, who wrote Illusions, the book before that, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, was rejected 13 times before it was published. In fact, he had taken the manuscript in the last letter of rejection. He threw it in the trash can, put it out by the curb for the trash man to pick up, and when he went back inside, his wife at the time, one of his many ex-wives, went out, got the manuscript out of the trash can, sent it to one more publisher, and that's one who published it, and here it was a bestseller. But 13 other publishing houses couldn't see it. So I mention that just to reinforce what you're saying, that just because other people don't understand it or get it doesn't mean it's not valid. It goes back to thy own self be true. Yes. So those are exciting things you have coming up. Any other projects you want to share with us? You working on any new books or anything?
I am conceptualizing my next book. I haven't quite put anything on paper yet. I've been doing a lot of painting, so I've had some talking about play. That's my playtime. So I've been doing some painting. But I've been taking it easy lately. Like I said in the beginning, I'm kind of in the middle of my own work right now for my own growth, and that requires my attention. And if I start getting too busy, then I put myself last, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I'm making a real effort to make sure that I'm giving myself attention as much as I'm giving attention to my work.
Good. Good. Well, it's funny, you talked about painting to relax, and I tried that for a little while, and then they gave me a citation for graffiti, so it didn't work out so good for me.
Yeah, that doesn't work so much.
They say you shouldn't paint on other people's walls, I guess.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Well, we talk about, in some of the groups I run around with, learning how to pay attention to your own stuff, and they say it's a great spiritual notion to learn how to keep our wind out of other people's sails. Instead, learn how to find out what our direction is going to be, which is what it sounds like you're doing right now. You're finding out what is the wind going into your sail, and which way do you need to adjust the sail to make your greatest progress. And I certainly support you in that.
Yeah, I think that's really the theme of this last year, this last 12 months has been my sail hasn't had a lot of wind, and I've been told to rest and recuperate and listen to your body. And now the wind's picking up, and I feel some direction, but I still don't know where it's headed. And I'm okay with that. Like I'm not freaking out and panicked because I don't have all the answers. I'm really okay with allowing it to unfold. I've rebirthed myself, 50 times already, so I know the game. I know how it's played, so I'm good.
Boy, you said a whole mouthful there. It is really tough to learn how to rest and relax. That's one of Gabby's biggest issues with me, because I go for days and days and days, and I went for a few weeks without a day off, and then this last Sunday, I didn't have anything to do. I woke up, I thought it was 7 a.m. I looked at the clock, it was 11. I got up, had a bowl of oatmeal. I thought, well, I'll just lay back down for a second. Next thing I knew, when I opened my eyes, it was almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, you need that so badly.
Yeah, but, it's hard for us to do that for ourselves. It's easy for us to tell other people, you really need to rest, and it's okay for you to take a little downtime and to recuperate. But, boy, isn't it tough for us to follow our own advice on that? Goodness.
Well, the problem for me is I love my work so much that I get so inspired when I'm working with people that my frequency gets really high, and I lose touch with my body, and I'll stay in those higher frequencies for long periods of time, and I'm not taking care of my physical body. And then when I come back down, I realize I've done too much. So I'm trying to adjust my habits and let myself go up there, but trying to maintain my presence with the physicality as well as the spirituality. And it's difficult because you lose touch with yourself when you go high like that. So I'm trying a new thing, and I think it's working, so we'll have to see how it goes.
Well, it's funny. You and I are almost twins in that. Less than 2 weeks ago, we were having a heat wave here in California. It was 114 degrees outside, and I had 3 funerals to do, and I had a temperature of 101. And at the second service, I almost passed out walking back up to my car from the graveside, and I barely made it. Then I went and did the third service outside, and by the time I got home, I realized, I really didn't do myself any favors.
No.
But, when you're in the mix of it, and, with what we do, it's hard to just call off and say, can you find another priest to go to that funeral? And in your work as well, working with people. So it is hard for us to sometimes listen when our body is telling us it's had enough. And I know that's something that I struggle with greatly. So I aligned with you on that, and I certainly support what you're trying to do so you can get to the center of things.
Yeah, I think it's important. We need to also consider ourselves while we're being service to others.
Right. Well, one of the things I did was, as soon as I felt better, I have a favorite place. It's like a sanctuary to me. It's the Botanical Gardens in Claremont. And so I went and renewed my annual pass so I can go up there and be my safe place and just be among the trees. There's there's a oak tree that's over 400 years old there. And sometimes I just sit under that tree and just soak up the 400 years of energy and wisdom that it has to offer. So what are some things you do to help you center?
That sounds beautiful.
Yeah. How do you help center yourself?
Painting is good for me. Painting takes my brain into a different area, and it helps the stress kind of wash away. I love meditation. So if I'm needing some actual answers or guidance, then I'll go into meditation, and that helps a lot. And really just having downtime in general. I snuggle with my kitties a lot when I don't want to work because they're very insistent that I sit on the couch for so many hours a day so they can sit on my lap. And I just give myself, over the years I've learned how to be present to what I need right now. And what works for me me yesterday may not work for me tomorrow, and so like I've gotten to this place where I ask my whole being, what do you need now? And sometimes that's a salt bath, and sometimes it's go to the gym, or sometimes it's just sit, meditate. But I've been practicing this last year. What do you need right now? And then giving it to myself and not arguing with it and not putting it off.
Well, that's a powerful thing you just said right there, particularly about what you need now may not be what you needed before. And I think we made a lot of mistakes trying to get to where we were before, because the universe only goes in one direction. It doesn't go backwards. It goes forward. So I think that's a powerful thing you just said, that what are your current needs opposed to what you needed before. Well, we're getting pretty close over here, and again, I thank you for being on the show. It's always a delight to have you, and we'll have you back again in the near future. And I wish you some great rest while you're going through this transition and the new development of your life. I want to thank Blake for doing such a wonderful job, as always, a good man behind the glass.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's back-breaking work, but somebody's got to do it, you know.
Well, you know, if you didn't, do handstands while you're doing the microphone, that might help.
That is true. That is true. And the nosebleeds would probably, come down a little.
There you go. There you go. Get your head out of the clouds there, my friend. And again, I want to thank Gabby for being a great producer and a wonderful, even better wife. And again, come out tomorrow night to Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in Covina and be part of the book signing and the Q&A. And if you don't show up there, or even if you do, come on Saturday to United Church of Christ in Claremont with Martha Bass and I. And again, I thank you for spending this time with us. And if nobody's told you that they love you this week, let me be the first. God bless.